Question 1. Benchmark analysis indicates that a financial services organization operating within the United Kingdom is designing an advanced VMware vSphere 7 X environment with a critical disaster recovery strategy. The organization handles sensitive customer financial data and is subject to stringent regulations including the UK GDPR and FCA guidelines. The primary challenge is to ensure the DR solution not only meets aggressive RTO/RPO targets, but also fully complies with data residency, data protection, and auditability requirements mandated by these regulations. Which of the following implementation approaches best aligns with these requirements? Option A. Implement a DR solution that leverages geographically dispersed VMware Cloud Foundation instances, ensuring all data remains within the UK, utilizes end-to-end encryption for data in transit and at rest, and provides comprehensive audit logs for all DR-related operations, with a formal review by the organization's legal and compliance departments prior to go-live. Option B. Select the most cost-effective DR solution that offers the fastest recovery times, assuming that standard cloud provider compliance certifications will satisfy regulatory obligations. Option C. Prioritize the implementation of the technically most advanced DR features to minimize downtime, deferring detailed regulatory compliance checks until after the initial deployment is complete. Option D. Rely on the DR solution vendor's documentation and assurances regarding compliance with UK GDPR and FCA guidelines, without conducting independent verification or consulting internal legal counsel. Correct answer is A. Implement a DR solution that leverages geographically dispersed VMware Cloud Foundation instances, ensuring all data remains within the UK, utilizes end-to-end encryption for data in transit and at rest, and provides comprehensive audit logs for all DR-related operations, with a formal review by the organization's legal and compliance departments prior to go-live. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent complexity of advanced VMware vSphere 7 X design, specifically concerning the implementation of a robust and compliant disaster recovery DR strategy. The challenge lies in balancing technical efficacy with the strict adherence to regulatory frameworks that govern data protection and business continuity. Careful judgment is required to ensure that the chosen DR solution not only meets recovery time objectives, RTO, and recovery point objectives, RPO, but also aligns with the specific legal and compliance mandates applicable to the organization's operating jurisdiction. The correct approach represents best professional practice, because it prioritizes a comprehensive assessment of regulatory requirements before selecting and implementing a DR solution. This proactive stance ensures that the design inherently incorporates compliance measures, such as data residency, encryption standards, and auditability, as mandated by relevant laws and industry guidelines. By engaging legal and compliance teams early, the design team mitigates the risk of costly remediation or non-compliance penalties. This aligns with the ethical obligation of IT professionals to design systems that are not only functional but also legally sound and secure, safeguarding both the organization and its stakeholders. An incorrect approach that involves prioritizing speed of implementation over regulatory due diligence is professionally unacceptable. This failure constitutes a significant regulatory and ethical lapse. It demonstrates a disregard for the legal obligations concerning data protection and business continuity, potentially exposing the organization to severe fines, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Such an approach violates the principle of responsible technology deployment, which mandates that all technical solutions must operate within the bounds of applicable laws and regulations. Another incorrect approach, focusing solely on cost-effectiveness without a thorough regulatory review, also presents a critical failure. While cost is a factor, it cannot supersede legal and compliance mandates. This approach risks selecting a DR solution that may be cheaper, but fails to meet essential regulatory requirements, leading to future compliance issues and potentially higher long-term costs due to remediation or penalties. Ethically, it prioritizes short-term financial gains over long-term organizational integrity and legal standing. A further incorrect approach, relying on vendor-provided compliance assurances without independent verification, is also professionally unsound. While vendors offer solutions, the ultimate responsibility for compliance rests with the deploying organization. Blindly trusting vendor claims without internal validation or consultation with legal and compliance experts is a dereliction of professional duty. This can lead to a false sense of security and significant compliance gaps, exposing the organization to regulatory scrutiny and potential sanctions. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured, risk-based approach. First, identify all applicable regulatory frameworks and compliance obligations relevant to the organization's data and operations. Second, engage legal and compliance stakeholders early in the design process to interpret these requirements and translate them into technical specifications. Third, evaluate potential DR solutions against these technical specifications and regulatory mandates, not just RTO/RPO. Fourth, conduct thorough testing and validation to ensure the implemented solution meets all technical and compliance objectives. Finally, establish ongoing monitoring and auditing processes to maintain compliance over time. Question 2. Examination of the data shows a client requesting the implementation of a specific, advanced VMware vSphere 7X feature that, based on preliminary analysis, may introduce significant security vulnerabilities and operational complexities not fully understood by the client's technical team. The client insists on its immediate deployment to meet a perceived competitive advantage. Option A. Inform the client that the requested feature cannot be implemented due to security concerns without further investigation or exploring alternative solutions. Option B. Proceed with the implementation of the requested feature, but advise the client to implement additional, unproven security measures to mitigate potential risks. Option C. Immediately implement the requested feature, as per the client's instructions to ensure client satisfaction and avoid potential project delays. Option D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment of the requested feature, document all potential security and operational impacts, and present alternative solutions that address the underlying business need with lower risk, alongside a detailed explanation of why the requested feature is not recommended at this time. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment of the requested feature, document all potential security and operational impacts, and present alternative solutions that address the underlying business need with lower risk, alongside a detailed explanation of why the requested feature is not recommended at this time. Explanation. The scenario presents a conflict between a client's perceived immediate need for a specific VMware vSphere 7X feature and the architect's professional responsibility to ensure the solution aligns with best practices, security, and long-term stability, as mandated by the VMware Professional Services Organization, so Code of Ethics and Conduct, which emphasizes integrity, objectivity, and competence. The challenge lies in balancing client satisfaction with the ethical obligation to provide sound, secure, and sustainable architectural designs. The architect must navigate potential pressure to implement a solution that, while requested, might introduce unforeseen risks or deviate from established security baselines. The correct approach involves a thorough risk assessment and a clear, documented communication strategy. By investigating the underlying business requirement driving the request for the specific feature, the architect can determine if alternative, more secure, or better supported methods exist to achieve the desired outcome. Presenting these alternatives, along with a detailed explanation of the risks associated with the requested feature, upholds the architect's duty of competence and integrity. This aligns with the PSO Code of Ethics principle of acting in the best interest of the client and the public, which includes safeguarding against potential harm from insecure or poorly designed systems. Transparency about potential risks and limitations is paramount. An incorrect approach would be to immediately implement the requested feature without due diligence. This violates the principle of competence, as it bypasses necessary risk assessment and validation. It also compromises integrity by potentially exposing the client to security vulnerabilities or operational instability, which is contrary to the ethical obligation to provide sound professional advice. Another incorrect approach is to dismiss the client's request outright without understanding the business drivers. This demonstrates a lack of objectivity and can damage the client relationship, failing to uphold the spirit of collaboration and problem-solving inherent in professional services. Finally, agreeing to implement the feature while downplaying or omitting the associated risks is a direct breach of integrity and honesty, potentially leading to significant negative consequences for the client and reputational damage for the architect and their organization. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making process that begins with understanding the client's core business needs. This is followed by a comprehensive technical evaluation, including risk assessment, security implications, and alignment with VMware best practices. Open and honest communication with the client, presenting findings and alternative solutions with clear justifications, is crucial. Documenting all discussions, decisions, and the rationale behind them provides a record of due diligence and professional conduct. Question 3. The performance metrics show a consistent pattern of high latency and packet loss impacting critical virtual machine workloads. Upon initial investigation, the physical network infrastructure appears to be operating within normal parameters. What is the most appropriate advanced design approach to diagnose and resolve this issue within the vSphere 7X environment? Option A. Analyze the vSphere distributed switch configuration, including uplink redundancy, load balancing policies, and network I/O control settings, to identify potential bottlenecks or misconfigurations. Option B. Disable network I/O control on the vSphere distributed switch to eliminate it as a potential source of network overhead and latency. Option C. Reconfigure the virtual machine network adapter settings to use a different virtual network driver to rule out driver-specific performance issues. Option D. Immediately increase the speed of the physical network interface cards, NIC, on the XC hosts to the maximum supported speed to alleviate potential bandwidth saturation. The correct answer is A. Analyze the vSphere distributed switch configuration, including uplink redundancy, load balancing policies, and network I/O control settings, to identify potential bottlenecks or misconfigurations. Explanation. The performance metrics show a consistent pattern of high latency and packet loss impacting critical virtual machine workloads. This scenario is professionally challenging because it directly affects business operations and requires a deep understanding of advanced vSphere networking concepts to diagnose and resolve effectively. The pressure to restore service quickly, coupled with the complexity of distributed systems, necessitates a methodical and informed approach. The correct approach involves a systematic investigation of the vSphere distributed switch configuration, including uplink redundancy, load balancing policies, and network I/O control settings. This aligns with best professional practice by prioritizing a thorough, evidence-based analysis of the underlying infrastructure. It ensures that the solution addresses the root cause rather than a symptom, minimizing the risk of recurrence and maintaining service integrity. This methodical approach is implicitly supported by general IT best practices and vendor recommendations for high-performance, resilient environments, which are the de facto standards in the absence of specific regulatory mandates for this technical domain. An incorrect approach that involves immediately increasing the physical network interface card, NIC, speed on the hosts without analyzing the distributed switch configuration fails to address potential bottlenecks within the vSphere networking layer. This is professionally unsound as it is a reactive measure that might mask the true issue or even exacerbate it by introducing new performance characteristics without understanding their impact. It bypasses the critical step of diagnosing the distributed switch's role in the observed latency and packet loss. Another incorrect approach, such as disabling network I/O control without understanding its impact on other workloads, is also professionally unacceptable. Network I/O control is designed to provide CoS for different traffic types. Disabling it without a clear understanding of its function and the potential consequences for other virtual machines could lead to unintended service degradation for other critical applications, violating the principle of least impact and potentially causing broader operational disruption. Professional reasoning process for such a situation should involve: first, clearly defining the problem and its impact. Second, gathering all relevant data, including performance metrics and configuration details. Third, forming hypotheses about potential root causes within the vSphere networking stack. Fourth, systematically testing these hypotheses, starting with the most likely and least disruptive. And finally, implementing and validating the chosen solution, documenting all steps and outcomes. This structured approach ensures that decisions are data-driven, minimize risk, and adhere to professional standards of care in managing complex IT infrastructure. Question 4. Strategic planning requires a proactive approach to identifying and resolving performance bottlenecks within a VMware vSphere 7X environment. Given a scenario where multiple virtual machines are experiencing intermittent slowdowns, impacting critical business applications, what is the most effective and professionally responsible method to diagnose and address the underlying cause? Option A. Bypass standard change control procedures to quickly implement a proposed solution, prioritizing speed over thorough investigation to minimize downtime. Option B. Immediately increase the allocated CPU and memory resources for all virtual machines reporting performance issues, as this is a common quick fix for slowdowns. Option C. Rely on user-reported symptoms and anecdotal evidence to guess at the most likely cause and apply a solution based on that assumption. Option D. Systematically analyze performance metrics across the vSphere infrastructure, including CPU, memory, storage I/O, and network utilization, to pinpoint specific resource contention or configuration issues before implementing any remediation. The correct answer is D. Systematically analyze performance metrics across the vSphere infrastructure, including CPU, memory, storage I/O, and network utilization, to pinpoint specific resource contention or configuration issues before implementing any remediation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because the organization is experiencing performance degradation that directly impacts business operations and potentially customer satisfaction. The challenge lies in identifying the root cause of this degradation within a complex vSphere environment and implementing a solution that is both effective and compliant with established operational best practices and any relevant internal or external service level agreements, SLAs. A hasty or unverified solution could introduce new problems, violate change control policies, or even lead to data loss, all of which carry significant professional and potential regulatory implications if SLAs are breached or data integrity is compromised. The correct approach, which involves a systematic, data-driven investigation using VMware's built-in performance monitoring tools and potentially third-party analytics, represents best professional practice. This method ensures that the identified issue is accurately diagnosed before any remediation is attempted. By analyzing performance metrics such as CPU utilization, memory contention, disk I/O latency, and network throughput, administrators can pinpoint the specific bottleneck. Implementing changes based on this validated data minimizes the risk of unintended consequences and aligns with the principle of responsible system management. This approach is ethically sound as it prioritizes system stability and operational continuity, thereby upholding the organization's commitment to its stakeholders and any contractual obligations. An incorrect approach would be to immediately implement a broad, unverified change, such as increasing resource allocations across the board, without identifying the specific resource constraint. This is professionally unacceptable because it is a shotgun approach that wastes resources, can mask the true problem, and may not resolve the issue, violates the principle of least privilege and efficient resource utilization. Furthermore, if this unverified change leads to further instability or performance issues, it could be seen as a failure to exercise due diligence and professional care. Another incorrect approach would be to rely solely on anecdotal evidence or user complaints without objective data. While user feedback is important, it is not a substitute for technical analysis. Basing critical infrastructure changes on subjective reports without empirical validation is a significant professional failing. It increases the risk of misdiagnosis and implementing ineffective or even detrimental solutions, potentially leading to breaches of operational standards or contractual obligations if performance targets are not met. Finally, bypassing established change management procedures for a quick fix is also professionally unacceptable. Even if a solution appears obvious, failing to follow documented change control processes, including testing and rollback plans, introduces significant risk. This can lead to unauthorized modifications, lack of accountability, and potential security vulnerabilities, all of which are serious ethical and professional breaches. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured problem-solving methodology. This begins with clearly defining the problem and its impact. Next, gather all relevant data using appropriate tools. Formulate hypotheses about the root cause and design experiments or tests to validate these hypotheses. Implement the solution based on validated data, ensuring it is done within a controlled change management framework. Finally, monitor the system post-implementation to confirm the resolution and document the entire process. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, risks are mitigated, and professional standards are upheld. Question 5. Research into the design of a VMware vSphere 7 X environment for a multinational financial services firm, where a key business unit handles sensitive customer data. The primary concern is ensuring that all data processed and stored within this vSphere environment strictly adheres to the data residency regulations of the countries where the firm operates and where its customers are located. The architect must propose a design that guarantees compliance without compromising the operational efficiency of the business unit. Option A. Prioritize the fastest possible deployment of the vSphere 7 X environment using a standardized global template, assuming that the chosen cloud provider's infrastructure inherently meets all necessary data residency requirements for all operating regions. Option B. Design the vSphere 7 X environment with a focus on leveraging geographically distributed VMware Cloud Foundation instances, ensuring that data is processed and stored within specific, predefined geographic regions that align with regulatory requirements, and implement robust data access controls and encryption at rest and in transit. Option C. Implement the vSphere 7 X environment with a primary focus on cost optimization, utilizing a single, central data center location, and address data residency concerns only if specific regulatory audits flag potential issues. Option D. Design the vSphere 7 X environment for maximum performance and scalability, deferring the detailed investigation and implementation of specific data residency controls to a post-deployment phase once the core functionality is established. Correct answer is B. Design the vSphere 7 X environment with a focus on leveraging geographically distributed VMware Cloud Foundation instances, ensuring that data is processed and stored within specific, predefined geographic regions that align with regulatory requirements, and implement robust data access controls and encryption at rest and in transit. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge where a senior architect must balance the immediate operational needs of a critical business unit with the long-term strategic goals of the organization, specifically concerning data residency and compliance. The pressure to deliver a functional solution quickly, coupled with potential resistance to a more complex but compliant design, requires careful stakeholder management and a deep understanding of the regulatory landscape. The architect must navigate conflicting priorities and ensure that the proposed solution is not only technically sound, but also legally defensible. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a thorough understanding of the regulatory framework governing data residency for the specific business unit. This involves engaging with legal and compliance teams to identify all applicable regulations, e.g., GDPR, CCPA, or specific industry regulations relevant to the exam's assumed jurisdiction, which for 3V0-21. 21 is typically a U.S.-centric context unless otherwise specified, implying adherence to U.S. federal and state data privacy laws. The architect must then design a vSphere 7 X solution that demonstrably meets these requirements, even if it introduces initial complexity or cost. This aligns with best professional practice by ensuring the organization operates within legal boundaries, mitigating risks of fines, reputational damage, and operational disruption due to noncompliance. It reflects a proactive and responsible approach to advanced design, where regulatory adherence is a foundational requirement, not an afterthought. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that focuses solely on the fastest deployment and lowest immediate cost, without verifying data residency compliance, represents a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This bypasses the fundamental obligation to operate within the law, potentially exposing the organization to severe penalties and legal action. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the potential consequences of noncompliance. An approach that assumes existing infrastructure is compliant without explicit verification, or that a generic cloud-first strategy negates data residency concerns, is also professionally unacceptable. This relies on assumptions rather than concrete evidence and regulatory guidance. It fails to acknowledge that data residency requirements are specific and often granular, and that simply migrating to a cloud environment does not automatically resolve these issues. This can lead to inadvertent violations and a false sense of security. An approach that defers the data residency investigation to a later phase, prioritizing immediate functionality, is a critical failure in professional judgment. Advanced design inherently requires foresight and the integration of all critical requirements from the outset. Delaying compliance considerations increases the risk of costly redesigns, project delays, and potential legal entanglements. It signifies a reactive rather than a proactive design methodology, which is contrary to the principles of advanced architectural practice. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves identifying all potential risks, including regulatory and compliance risks, early in the design process. The architect should then prioritize requirements based on their criticality, with legal and regulatory mandates being paramount. Stakeholder engagement is crucial to understand business needs, but these needs must be framed within the context of legal and ethical obligations. When conflicts arise, the architect must clearly articulate the risks associated with noncompliance and advocate for solutions that uphold regulatory standards, even if they require more effort or investment. Documentation of the decision-making process, including the rationale for choosing a particular design and the consideration of alternatives, is essential for accountability and future reference. Question 6. The evaluation methodology shows a critical decision point in designing a VMware vSphere 7X environment for a financial services firm, where the choice of storage technology must satisfy stringent regulatory compliance and high availability requirements. Given the firm's reliance on real-time transaction processing and the need for an auditable data lifecycle, which of the following storage design considerations best aligns with the regulatory framework and best professional practice for this sector? Option A. Selecting a storage solution that offers the highest IOPS performance and lowest latency, with a focus on minimizing upfront capital expenditure, assuming that future compliance needs can be addressed through software add-ons. Option B. Prioritizing a storage solution with a proven track record in regulated financial environments, offering robust data integrity features, comprehensive audit logging capabilities, and a well-defined disaster recovery and business continuity plan that meets or exceeds regulatory RTO/RPO objectives. Option C. Opting for a cloud-based object storage solution for its cost-effectiveness and scalability, with the understanding that data sovereignty concerns can be managed through contractual agreements alone. Option D. Implementing a direct-attached storage DAS solution for its simplicity and perceived security, with the assumption that data backups to a separate offsite location will suffice for compliance and availability needs. The correct answer is A. Selecting a storage solution that offers the highest IOPS performance and lowest latency, with a focus on minimizing upfront capital expenditure, assuming that future compliance needs can be addressed through software add-ons. Explanation. The evaluation methodology shows a critical juncture in advanced VMware vSphere 7X design where the selection of a storage solution directly impacts performance, availability, and cost, all of which are subject to regulatory scrutiny in the financial services sector. The challenge lies in balancing the technical merits of different storage technologies against the stringent compliance requirements and the need for robust disaster recovery capabilities, as mandated by financial regulations. This scenario demands a decision-making process that prioritizes data integrity, security, and business continuity above all else, while also considering the economic implications. The correct approach prioritizes a storage solution that offers proven resilience, robust data protection features, and a clear audit trail for compliance reporting. This aligns with the principles of least privilege and defense in depth, often emphasized in financial sector regulations, ensuring that data is protected against unauthorized access and loss. Furthermore, a solution with a strong track record in similar regulated environments demonstrates a commitment to meeting industry standards for availability and disaster recovery, which are paramount for financial institutions. This approach represents best professional practice because it proactively addresses regulatory obligations and minimizes risk, thereby safeguarding client data and maintaining operational continuity. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the lowest initial cost without a thorough assessment of its long-term operational expenses, scalability, and compliance features would be professionally unacceptable. This could lead to hidden costs, performance bottlenecks, and ultimately, non-compliance with financial regulations, resulting in significant penalties and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach that overlooks the importance of robust disaster recovery and business continuity planning, opting for a solution with limited redundancy or recovery options, would violate the fundamental duty to protect client assets and ensure service availability, core tenet of financial sector regulation. This failure to adequately plan for contingencies exposes the organization to unacceptable risks. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive understanding of all applicable regulatory requirements. This should be followed by a thorough technical evaluation of potential solutions, mapping their capabilities against these requirements. A risk assessment, considering both technical and compliance risks, is crucial. Finally, a cost-benefit analysis that includes total cost of ownership and potential compliance remediation costs should inform the final decision. This systematic approach ensures that all critical factors are considered, leading to a well-justified and compliant design. Question 7. Strategic planning requires a methodical approach to designing and implementing new solutions that balance application performance needs with established security and operational policies. When a critical new application demands specific network configurations and storage access patterns that appear to conflict with existing security group policies and data residency regulations, what is the most professionally responsible course of action for the vSphere design team? Option A. Refuse the application's requests outright, citing strict adherence to current security and operational policies, and advise the application team to find alternative, less demanding solutions. Option B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment, engage security and compliance teams to explore policy exceptions or necessary policy updates, and document the final decision and its justification. Option C. Implement the application's requested configurations immediately to ensure timely deployment, assuming the security and compliance teams will review and adjust policies later if necessary. Option D. Proceed with the design based solely on the application's technical requirements, prioritizing performance and availability above all other considerations, and address any policy conflicts post-implementation. Correct answer is B. Conduct a thorough risk assessment, engage security and compliance teams to explore policy exceptions or necessary policy updates, and document the final decision and its justification. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a common challenge in advanced VMware vSphere design, where the technical requirements for a new critical application conflict with existing security policies and operational constraints. The challenge lies in balancing the application's performance and availability needs with the organization's commitment to regulatory compliance and risk mitigation. A rushed or technically biased decision could lead to security vulnerabilities, operational instability, or non-compliance, all of which carry significant financial and reputational risks. The pressure to deliver a functional solution quickly can obscure the need for a thorough, risk-based assessment. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a comprehensive risk assessment and a collaborative, policy-driven decision-making process. This aligns with best practices in IT governance and security frameworks, which mandate that technology deployments must adhere to established organizational policies and regulatory requirements. By involving stakeholders from security, compliance, and operation, the design team ensures that all potential impacts are considered. Documenting the decision, including the rationale and any approved deviations, provides an audit trail and reinforces accountability. This approach represents best professional practice because it systematically addresses potential risks, ensures adherence to the established regulatory framework, which for this exam is assumed to be a generic, best practice IT governance model without specific country mandates, and fosters a shared understanding and ownership of the solution. Incorrect approach is analysis. An approach that solely focuses on meeting the application's technical requirements without adequately considering security and compliance risks is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the organization's established risk appetite and regulatory obligations. It could lead to the deployment of a solution that is vulnerable to attack, data breaches, or operational failures, resulting in regulatory penalties and reputational damage. An approach that rigidly adheres to existing policies without exploring potential technical solutions that could meet both application needs and policy objectives is also professionally suboptimal. While compliance is crucial, an overly rigid stance can stifle innovation and prevent the adoption of technologies that could enhance business capabilities. This can lead to missed opportunities and a perception of the IT department as an impediment rather than an enabler. An approach that bypasses established change control and risk assessment processes, even with good intentions, is a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This undermines the integrity of the organization's governance framework, creates shadow IT, and increases the likelihood of unforeseen issues. It demonstrates a lack of professional discipline and a disregard for the established procedures designed to protect the organization. Professional reasoning. Professionals should employ a structured decision-making framework that begins with a clear understanding of the business requirements and constraints. This framework should include 1. Requirement gathering. Thoroughly document the application's technical needs. 2. Policy and regulatory review. Identify all applicable organizational policies and external regulatory requirements. 3. Risk assessment. Evaluate the potential risks associated with various design options, considering security, compliance, operational, and performance impacts. 4. Stakeholder consultation. Engage relevant teams, application owners, security, compliance, operations, to gather input and build consensus. 5. Solution design and evaluation. Develop and assess design options against requirements, policies, and risk tolerance. 6. Documentation and approval. Clearly document the chosen solution, the rationale, and any approved exceptions, obtaining necessary sign-offs. This systematic process ensures that decisions are informed, defensible, and aligned with organizational objectives and responsibilities. Question 8. Which approach would be most appropriate for designing a disaster recovery solution for a VMware vSphere 7 X environment that handles sensitive customer data, considering the need to comply with strict data sovereignty regulations? Option A. Deploy a disaster recovery solution that replicates data to a third-party managed service provider, relying on the provider's standard compliance certifications, without independently verifying their adherence to the specific data sovereignty requirements of the organization's customer data. Option B. Focus solely on achieving the shortest possible recovery time objective (RTO) and recovery point objective (RPO) for the disaster recovery solution, assuming that regulatory compliance will be addressed as a secondary concern after the technical design is finalized. Option C. Implement a disaster recovery solution that prioritizes the lowest cost for replication and storage, utilizing the most readily available cloud provider regions, without a detailed review of the specific data sovereignty implications of each region. Option D. Design a disaster recovery solution that leverages geographically diverse replication to a secondary data center, ensuring that the chosen location adheres to the same data sovereignty laws as the primary data center and includes robust encryption and access controls for all replicated data. The correct answer is D. Design a disaster recovery solution that leverages geographically diverse replication to a secondary data center, ensuring that the chosen location adheres to the same data sovereignty laws as the primary data center and includes robust encryption and access controls for all replicated data. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the critical nature of data protection and compliance within a regulated environment. The organization is operating under specific VMware vSphere 7 X design principles that inherently impact data security and availability. The challenge lies in balancing the need for robust disaster recovery capabilities with the stringent requirements of data sovereignty and regulatory adherence, particularly concerning the location and handling of sensitive data. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any proposed solution not only meets technical objectives, but also satisfies legal and compliance mandates. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive risk assessment and a design that explicitly addresses data sovereignty requirements from the outset. This involves understanding the specific regulatory framework applicable to the organization's data, e.g., GDPR if operating within the EU, or other relevant national data protection laws, and ensuring that the disaster recovery strategy is architected to comply with these regulations. This includes selecting appropriate replication technologies, data storage locations, and access controls that align with data residency mandates. Adhering to these principles demonstrates a commitment to both technical excellence and legal compliance, mitigating the risk of regulatory penalties and reputational damage. An incorrect approach that overlooks data sovereignty would fail to meet regulatory obligations. For instance, implementing a disaster recovery solution that replicates sensitive data to a jurisdiction with less stringent data protection laws, or without explicit consent and contractual safeguards, would constitute a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This could lead to breaches of data protection regulations, resulting in substantial fines and legal repercussions. Another incorrect approach might be to prioritize cost savings over compliance, leading to a technically functional but legally non-compliant disaster recovery solution. This demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the organization's legal responsibilities, potentially exposing it to severe penalties and loss of trust from customers and stakeholders. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a thorough understanding of the regulatory landscape relevant to the data being protected. This should be followed by a detailed assessment of technical requirements, including performance, availability, and recovery objectives. Crucially, the design process must integrate compliance considerations at every stage, ensuring that all technical decisions are evaluated against regulatory mandates. Collaboration with legal and compliance teams is essential to validate the proposed solution and confirm adherence to all applicable laws and guidelines. Question 9. The review process indicates that a new vSphere 7X environment is being deployed to host sensitive customer data, and the project timeline is aggressive. The design team is considering several approaches to secure the environment. Which approach best aligns with advanced design principles for security and compliance in a regulated industry? Option A. Implement a comprehensive security architecture that leverages vSphere's native security features, including robust RBAC, vSphere lockdown mode, encrypted vMotion, and integrates with network security controls like distributed firewalls and microsegmentation, all documented against VMware's security hardening guides. Option B. Disable non-essential vSphere security features like encryption and advanced access controls to expedite deployment and simplify ongoing management, relying on operational procedures to mitigate risks. Option C. Focus primarily on securing the network perimeter with firewalls and intrusion detection systems, assuming internal threats are minimal and that vSphere's default settings offer sufficient protection. Option D. Adopt a reactive security model where security controls are implemented only after a security incident is detected, prioritizing rapid initial deployment over preventative measures. The correct answer is A. Implement a comprehensive security architecture that leverages vSphere's native security features, including robust RBAC, vSphere lockdown mode, encrypted vMotion, and integrates with network security controls like distributed firewalls and microsegmentation, all documented against VMware's security hardening guides. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge rooted in the inherent tension between rapid technological adoption and the need for robust security and compliance. The pressure to deploy new features quickly can lead to overlooking critical security configurations, potentially exposing sensitive data and violating regulatory mandates. The architect must balance innovation with a thorough understanding of the VMware vSphere 7X security best practices and relevant compliance frameworks. The challenge lies in identifying the most effective and compliant method for securing vSphere environments without hindering legitimate operational needs. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a proactive and layered security strategy that aligns with established VMware security hardening guides and general compliance principles. This includes implementing strong authentication mechanisms, network segmentation, least privilege access controls, and regular security patching. Specifically, leveraging vSphere's built-in security features like role-based access control RBAC, vSphere lockdown mode, and encrypted vMotion, alongside network security best practices such as distributed firewalling and microsegmentation, forms a robust defense. This approach is best professional practice because it directly addresses known vulnerabilities and attack vectors, minimizes the attack surface, and provides auditable controls that are essential for demonstrating compliance with security regulations. It prioritizes security from the design phase, ensuring that compliance is built-in rather than an afterthought. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to rely solely on perimeter security without addressing internal vulnerabilities. This fails to meet regulatory requirements for data protection, as it assumes threats only originate externally. Internally, compromised credentials or insider threats can bypass perimeter defenses, leading to data breaches and noncompliance. Another incorrect approach is to disable security features to improve performance or simplify management. This is a direct violation of security best practices and regulatory mandates that require the implementation of appropriate security controls. Disabling features like encryption or robust access controls leaves the environment vulnerable and makes it impossible to demonstrate due diligence in protecting sensitive data. A third incorrect approach is to implement security measures ad hoc without a documented strategy or adherence to established hardening guides. This leads to inconsistent security postures, potential misconfigurations, and difficulty in auditing. It fails to provide a systematic and defensible approach to security, which is a common requirement in regulatory frameworks. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a risk-based approach to security design. This involves identifying critical assets, understanding potential threats and vulnerabilities, and implementing controls commensurate with the identified risks. The process should begin with a thorough understanding of the specific regulatory landscape applicable to the organization's data and operations. VMware's official security hardening guides and best practices should be the primary reference for vSphere configurations. Regular security audits, vulnerability assessments, and penetration testing are crucial for validating the effectiveness of implemented controls. Furthermore, a strong emphasis on documentation and change management ensures that security configurations are maintained and auditable. When faced with pressure to deploy quickly, professionals must advocate for a security-first mindset, explaining the long-term risks and compliance implications of shortcuts. Question 10. The analysis reveals that financial services organization operating under strict data residency and availability regulations requires a robust disaster recovery solution for its vSphere 7X environment. The primary objective is to ensure minimal data loss and rapid recovery of critical applications in the event of a site failure. The organization has 2 geographically separated data centers. Considering the need for automated failover, regular testing capabilities, and adherence to compliance mandates, which of the following approaches best satisfies these requirements? Option A. Rely solely on manual VM backups and restores from a secondary storage location, performing restores only when a disaster event occurs. Option B. Deploy synchronous storage array-based replication for all virtual machines across both data centers to achieve near-zero data loss. Option C. Implement VMware Site Recovery Manager, SRM, with vSphere replication to orchestrate automated failover and recovery plans, allowing for granular RPO settings and regular non-disruptive testing. Option D. Utilize asynchronous storage array-based replication between the 2 data centers, managing failover manually through the storage vendor's tools. The correct answer is C. Implement VMware Site Recovery Manager, SRM, with vSphere replication to orchestrate automated failover and recovery plans, allowing for granular RPO settings and regular non-disruptive testing. Explanation. The scenario presents a common challenge in advanced VMware vSphere design, balancing the need for robust disaster recovery, DR, capabilities with the operational complexities and potential security implications of implementing cross-site replication. The professional challenge lies in selecting a DR strategy that meets stringent recovery point objectives, RPO, and recovery time objectives, RTO, while adhering to the specific regulatory framework governing the organization's data and operations. This requires a deep understanding of VMware's replication technologies, their limitations, and how they align with compliance mandates. The correct approach involves leveraging VMware Site Recovery Manager, SRM, with vSphere replication. This is the best professional practice because SRM is specifically designed to orchestrate and automate DR plans, ensuring consistent recovery across sites. vSphere replication provides granular, VM-centric replication, allowing for flexible RPO settings that can be tailored to individual workloads. This combination directly addresses the need for automated failover and failback, minimizing manual intervention during a disaster, which is critical for meeting RTOs. Furthermore, This approach allows for the creation of detailed runbooks and testing procedures, which are often mandated by regulatory frameworks for business continuity and disaster recovery. The ability to test DR plans without impacting production environments is a key compliance requirement. An incorrect approach would be to rely solely on manual VM backups and restores for DR. This fails to meet the RTO requirements for critical applications, as manual restoration is inherently slow and prone to human error. From a regulatory perspective, this approach often falls short of demonstrating a robust and tested DR plan, potentially violating compliance requirements related to data availability and business continuity. It also introduces significant risk of data loss if the backup integrity is compromised or if the restore process fails. Another incorrect approach would be to implement a synchronous storage array-based replication without a robust orchestration tool like SRM. While this can provide data replication, it lacks the automated failover and failback capabilities necessary to meet aggressive RTOs. Managing the failover process manually across different storage arrays and network configurations is complex and error-prone, increasing the risk of extended downtime and data inconsistencies. Regulatory bodies often require demonstrable, automated recovery processes, which this approach would not adequately provide. A third incorrect approach would be to implement synchronous replication for all workloads across geographically dispersed sites. While synchronous replication offers the lowest RPO, near zero data loss, it is highly sensitive to network latency and can significantly impact application performance. For many organizations, the cost and performance overhead of synchronous replication for all VMs are prohibitive. More importantly, regulatory frameworks typically allow for a defined RPO, and mandating synchronous replication for all workloads without a specific business or regulatory justification would be an inefficient and potentially non-compliant use of resources, failing to demonstrate a risk-based approach to DR. The professional reasoning process for this situation involves a thorough assessment of business requirements, including RPO/RTO for critical applications. This must be followed by an evaluation of available technologies against these requirements and the specific regulatory landscape. The chosen solution must be demonstrable, testable, and auditable to satisfy compliance obligations. Professionals should prioritize solutions that offer automation, reduce manual intervention, and provide clear reporting and testing capabilities. Question 11. The audit findings indicate a significant deficiency in the organization's disaster recovery plan for its VMware vSphere 7X environment, specifically regarding the ability to restore critical virtual machines with an acceptable recovery time and point objectives. The current approach relies on ad hoc manual backups and lacks documented, tested recovery procedures. Considering the need for a robust and auditable solution, which of the following strategies best addresses these audit findings and aligns with best practices for business continuity and resilience? Option A. Invest in the most advanced, feature-rich third-party disaster recovery software available without immediate focus on testing or documentation, assuming its inherent reliability. Option B. Implement a tiered recovery strategy utilizing vSphere replication for critical VMs and a robust backup solution for less critical ones, ensuring regular documented testing of recovery procedures for all tiers. Option C. Rely solely on frequent manual backups of all virtual machines, with the operations team maintaining a general understanding of the restoration process. Option D. Archive all virtual machine backups to a remote tape library and consider recovery only when a major incident is imminent. The correct answer is B. Implement a tiered recovery strategy utilizing vSphere replication for critical VMs and a robust backup solution for less critical ones, ensuring regular documented testing of recovery procedures for all tiers. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The audit findings highlight a critical gap in the organization's disaster recovery (DR) strategy concerning the resilience of its vSphere 7X environment. Specifically, the lack of documented and tested procedures for recovering critical virtual machines (VM) within defined recovery time objectives (RTO) and recovery point objectives (RPO) presents a significant business continuity risk. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires not only technical expertise in VMware vSphere, but also a deep understanding of business impact and regulatory compliance, demanding a solution that balances technical feasibility with business requirements and potential regulatory scrutiny. The pressure to rectify this deficiency quickly without compromising existing operations or introducing new vulnerabilities necessitates careful consideration of various recovery strategies. Correct approach analysis. Implementing a robust, tiered recovery strategy that leverages vSphere's native replication capabilities, e.g., vSphere replication, and potentially integrates with a third-party backup and recovery solution, coupled with regular, documented testing, represents best professional practice. This approach is justified by the need to meet RTOs and RPOs, which are fundamental to business continuity and often mandated by industry-specific regulations or internal governance frameworks. A tiered strategy allows for different levels of protection and recovery speed based on the criticality of the VM, optimizing resource utilization and cost-effectiveness. Regular testing ensures the documented procedures are effective and that the recovery infrastructure is functional, thereby demonstrating due diligence and compliance with potential audit requirements. This proactive and documented approach minimizes business disruption and financial loss in the event of a disaster. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach would be to solely rely on manual VM backups without a defined recovery process or testing schedule. This fails to meet RTOs and RPOs, as manual recovery is inherently slow and prone to human error, leading to extended downtime and potential data loss. This approach also lacks the auditable evidence required by many regulatory bodies, demonstrating a failure in due diligence and risk management. Another incorrect approach would be to implement a complex, untested replication solution without proper documentation or training for the operations team. While the technology might be sound, its ineffectiveness in a real disaster scenario due to lack of familiarity or operational readiness makes it a failure. This demonstrates a lack of comprehensive planning and execution, potentially leading to a failed recovery and significant business impact, which would be viewed unfavorably during an audit and could have regulatory implications if service-level agreements, SLAs, or compliance mandates are not met. A third incorrect approach would be to prioritize cost savings by selecting the cheapest backup solution, without considering its ability to meet the defined RTOs and RPOs. This demonstrates a misunderstanding of the business impact of downtime and data loss, prioritizing financial considerations over critical business continuity requirements. This can lead to significant financial and reputational damage in the event of a disaster and may violate regulatory requirements for data protection and availability. Professional reasoning. Professionals faced with such audit finding should first engage with business stakeholders to clearly define and prioritize RTOs and RPOs for different tiers of applications and VMs. This understanding forms the basis for selecting appropriate recovery technologies and designing a tiered strategy. The next step involves evaluating VMware's native capabilities and potential third-party solutions, considering factors like scalability, cost, and ease of management. Crucially, any chosen solution must be thoroughly documented, and a rigorous testing schedule must be established and adhered to. This iterative process of design, implementation, and testing, informed by business needs and regulatory expectations, ensures a resilient and compliant vSphere environment. Question 12. Compliance review shows that the organization's advanced VMware vSphere 7X design, intended to optimize performance and disaster recovery through distributed storage and replication, may be storing or processing sensitive customer data in geographical locations that violate specific data residency regulations. The design utilizes vSAN across multiple sites for resilience and vMotion for workload mobility. What is the most appropriate course of action to ensure regulatory compliance without compromising essential operational capabilities? Option A. Reconfigure the vSphere 7X design to ensure that all sensitive customer data remains within the legally mandated geographical boundaries, potentially by segmenting vSAN data stores by region, restricting vMotion traffic to within compliant zones, and implementing geographically aware disaster recovery replication. Option B. Prioritize the existing disaster recovery and performance objectives of the distributed design, and address any potential data residency issues through post-implementation audits and remediation efforts if non-compliance is detected. Option C. Implement a strict policy prohibiting all vMotion and vSAN data movement between any sites, regardless of their geographical location, to err on the side of caution. Option D. Assume that the virtualization layer abstracts data location sufficiently to meet regulatory requirements and focus on optimizing the existing distributed design for performance. The correct answer is A. Reconfigure the vSphere 7X design to ensure that all sensitive customer data remains within the legally mandated geographical boundaries, potentially by segmenting vSphere and data stores by region, restricting vMotion traffic to within compliant zones, and implementing geographically aware disaster recovery replication. Explanation: Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to data residency and compliance within a virtualized environment. The core difficulty lies in balancing the technical requirements for optimal performance and disaster recovery with the stringent regulatory obligations concerning where sensitive customer data can reside. The organization must ensure that its advanced VMware vSphere 7X design, which leverages distributed technologies for resilience, does not inadvertently violate data sovereignty laws. This requires a deep understanding of both the VMware architecture and the specific legal and regulatory landscape governing data handling. Careful judgment is needed to avoid both operational inefficiencies and legal repercussions. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a thorough assessment of the VMware vSphere 7X design against the specific data residency requirements mandated by the relevant regulatory framework. This means identifying which components of the design, such as vSphere and data stores, vMotion traffic, or disaster recovery replication targets, might involve data transfer or storage outside of the permitted geographical boundaries. The solution then focuses on reconfiguring or redesigning these components to ensure data remains within the compliant regions. This might involve implementing regional vSphere and clusters, configuring vMotion to respect data locality, or utilizing geographically aware replication strategies. This approach represents best professional practice because it directly addresses the compliance gap by aligning the technical implementation with legal mandates, thereby mitigating risk and ensuring the integrity of the organization's data handling practices. It demonstrates a proactive and responsible approach to managing complex IT infrastructure within a regulated environment. Incorrect approach is analysis. One incorrect approach is to assume that because the data is virtualized, it is inherently compliant with all data residency regulations. This is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. Virtualization abstracts physical location, but data still resides on physical hardware in specific geographical locations. Failing to verify these locations against legal requirements can lead to severe penalties, including fines and reputational damage, for violating data sovereignty laws. Another incorrect approach is to prioritize performance and disaster recovery capabilities over data residency without a proper risk assessment and mitigation plan. This is professionally unsound and ethically questionable. While performance and resilience are critical, they cannot supersede legal obligations. This approach demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a failure to integrate compliance into the core design principles, potentially exposing the organization to legal challenges and loss of customer trust. A third incorrect approach is to implement a blanket ban on all cross-border data movement within the vSphere environment without understanding the specific nuances of the regulations. While seemingly cautious, this can lead to operational inefficiencies and hinder legitimate business functions that may be permitted under specific conditions or with appropriate safeguards. This demonstrates a lack of nuanced understanding of the regulatory framework and an overly simplistic, potentially detrimental, solution. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this domain must adopt a risk-based approach that integrates compliance from the outset of any design or modification. The decision-making process should involve 1. Understanding the specific regulatory requirements applicable to the data being handled. 2. Mapping these requirements to the technical components and data flows within the VMware vSphere 7X environment. 3. Identifying potential compliance gaps and assessing the associated risks. 4. Developing and implementing technical solutions that address these gaps while balancing operational needs. 5. Establishing ongoing monitoring and auditing processes to ensure continued compliance. This systematic approach ensures that technical solutions are not only functional, but also legally sound and ethically responsible. Question 13. During the evaluation of a new VMware vSphere 7X environment for a financial services organization operating under strict data residency regulations, The architect is tasked with designing a robust disaster recovery solution. The primary concern is ensuring that all sensitive customer data, as defined by the relevant regulatory framework, remains physically located within the European Union at all times, even during replication or failover scenarios. The organization has offices in Germany and France, and the data must not leave these geographical boundaries. Which of the following approaches best satisfies the regulatory requirements for data residency while providing effective disaster recovery? Option A. Utilize vSphere replication to replicate VMs to a cloud-based disaster recovery service located in the United States, relying on encryption to protect the data in transit and at rest. Option B. Implement a single data center in Germany and leverage a third-party backup solution that stores backups in a geographically diverse location outside the EU, assuming data is anonymized before backup. Option C. Implement a stretched cluster across the German and French data centers, utilizing vSphere replication to replicate critical VMs to a secondary site in Ireland for enhanced availability. Option D. Design a primary site in Germany and a secondary site in France, configuring vSphere replication to replicate VMs between these two EU data centers, ensuring all replication traffic stays within the EU. The correct answer is C. Implement a stretched cluster across the German and French data centers, utilizing vSphere replication to replicate critical VMs to a secondary site in Ireland for enhanced availability. Explanation: this scenario presents a professional challenge due to the critical nature of data protection and the potential for significant business impact if compliance is not maintained. The architect must balance the need for efficient data recovery with the stringent requirements of data residency and privacy regulations. The core of the challenge lies in understanding the nuances of data sovereignty and how different storage and replication strategies interact with these legal frameworks. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes adherence to the specified regulatory framework. By selecting a solution that explicitly ensures data remains within the designated geographical boundaries, the architect directly addresses the legal mandate. This proactive stance minimizes the risk of regulatory penalties, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. It demonstrates a commitment to ethical data handling and a thorough understanding of the legal obligations governing the organization's operations. An incorrect approach that proposes replicating data to a region outside the specified jurisdiction, even for enhanced disaster recovery, fails to meet the fundamental regulatory requirement. This would constitute a direct violation of data residency laws, exposing the organization to legal repercussions. Another incorrect approach that relies on the assumption that data is anonymized or encrypted to bypass residency requirements is also professionally unacceptable. While encryption and anonymization are important security measures, they do not negate the legal obligation of data residency in many jurisdictions. The law often dictates that the data itself, regardless of its state, must reside within the permitted boundaries. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes cost savings over compliance, by choosing a less compliant but cheaper solution, demonstrates a severe lapse in professional judgment and ethical responsibility. Financial considerations should never supersede legal and ethical obligations, especially concerning sensitive data. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with a comprehensive understanding of all applicable regulatory requirements. This should be followed by an assessment of technical solutions against these requirements, prioritizing compliance. Risk assessment should then be conducted, evaluating the potential consequences of noncompliance. Finally, a solution that demonstrably meets both technical and regulatory needs, while also considering operational efficiency and cost, should be selected. In cases of conflict, legal counsel should be consulted to ensure full understanding and adherence to the law. Question 14. Market research demonstrates that advanced features within VMware vSphere 7 X can significantly enhance operational efficiency for financial institutions. When designing a new virtualized infrastructure for a UK-based financial services firm, which approach best ensures compliance with relevant UK data protection regulations and financial conduct guidelines? Option A. Prioritize the implementation of advanced vSphere 7 X features that offer the greatest performance gains, with a plan to address any potential regulatory concerns through post-implementation audits and remediation. Option B. Engage legal and compliance teams from the initial design phase to conduct a comprehensive review of proposed vSphere 7. X features against the UK GDPR, Financial Conduct Authority, FCA regulations, and other applicable data protection and security mandates, integrating their feedback into the final design. Option C. Implement the advanced vSphere 7. X features based on vendor best practices and existing internal security policies, assuming that these general measures will adequately satisfy regulatory requirements for data protection and privacy. Option D. Design the infrastructure to leverage advanced vSphere 7. X features, ensuring that all technical decisions are reviewed and approved by the IT architecture team, with a secondary review by the compliance department, only if significant deviations from standard practices are identified. The correct answer is A. Prioritize the implementation of advanced vSphere 7. X features that offer the greatest performance gains, with a plan to address any potential regulatory concerns through post-implementation audits and remediation. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid technological adoption and the stringent regulatory requirements for data handling and security within the financial services sector. The firm's commitment to leveraging advanced VMware vSphere 7 X features for competitive advantage must be balanced against its obligation to comply with the specific data protection and privacy regulations applicable to its operations. The core difficulty lies in ensuring that the design and implementation of these advanced features do not inadvertently create vulnerabilities or non-compliance points. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a proactive, risk-based assessment aligned with regulatory mandates. By engaging legal and compliance teams early in the design phase, the firm ensures that all technical decisions are vetted against the relevant regulatory framework. This integrated approach allows for the identification and mitigation of potential compliance gaps before they become costly issues. Specifically, it demonstrates adherence to principles of data minimization, purpose limitation, and robust security controls, which are foundational to most data protection regulations. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical feasibility without considering regulatory implications is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for legal obligations, potentially leading to significant fines, reputational damage, and loss of customer trust. Such an approach violates the ethical duty of professionals to act with due diligence and to ensure their work does not cause harm or contravene established laws. Another incorrect approach that relies on post-implementation audits to identify compliance issues is also professionally deficient. While audits are necessary, relying on them as the primary mechanism for regulatory adherence is reactive and inefficient. It implies a lack of foresight and a willingness to accept a higher risk of non-compliance during the operational period. This can lead to costly remediation efforts and potential disruption if significant issues are discovered after the system is in production. A third incorrect approach that assumes existing security measures are sufficient without specific validation against the new vSphere 7. X features is equally problematic. Regulatory frameworks often require specific controls tailored to the technologies in use. A generic assumption of sufficiency is a failure of due diligence and can lead to unforeseen security weaknesses and compliance breaches. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework that integrates technical design with regulatory requirements from the outset. This includes 1. Identifying all applicable regulations, 2. Mapping technical design choices to specific regulatory obligations, 3. Conducting a thorough risk assessment for each design element concerning compliance, 4. Collaborating with legal and compliance experts throughout the design and implementation lifecycle. 5. Establishing clear documentation of compliance considerations and decisions. Question 15. The assessment process reveals that a financial services organization is deploying a new VMware vSphere 7 X environment to host sensitive customer data and trading applications. The organization operates under strict regulatory mandates requiring data residency within a specific geographic region and comprehensive audit trails for all administrative actions and data access. The proposed design utilizes a hybrid cloud model with on-premises vSphere clusters and VMware Cloud on AWS, Which design approach best ensures regulatory compliance for data residency and auditability? Option A. Deploy the environment without specific data residency configurations, assuming that the hybrid nature of the deployment inherently satisfies compliance, and conduct periodic ad hoc security audits. Option B. Implement granular role-based access control (RBAC). Within vSphere, configure comprehensive audit logging for all administrative and user actions, and ensure that data storage and processing for sensitive customer data are explicitly configured to reside within the mandated geographic region, leveraging vSphere storage policies and VMware Cloud on AWS region selection. Option C. Rely primarily on network-level firewalls and intrusion detection systems to secure the perimeter, and assume that the cloud provider's default logging mechanisms are sufficient for audit trail requirements. Option D. Focus solely on encrypting data at rest and in transit, without explicitly configuring vSphere's RBAC or ensuring specific data residency controls, as encryption is considered the primary compliance control. The correct answer is B. Implement granular role-based access control (RBAC). Within vSphere, configure comprehensive audit logging for all administrative and user actions, and ensure that data storage and processing for sensitive customer data are explicitly configured to reside within the mandated geographic region, leveraging vSphere storage policies and VMware Cloud on AWS region selection. Explanation. The assessment process reveals a common challenge in advanced VMware vSphere 7X environments, ensuring regulatory compliance, specifically concerning data residency and access controls within a cloud-native context. This scenario is professionally challenging because the dynamic nature of cloud deployments, the use of containerized applications, and the distributed responsibilities inherent in a multi-tenant or hybrid cloud model can obscure traditional perimeter-based security and compliance controls. Architects must balance the agility and scalability benefits of modern infrastructure with stringent regulatory requirements, which often mandate specific data handling, logging, and access audit trails. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it proactively integrates compliance requirements into the design from the outset, leveraging VMware's native capabilities and established security principles. Specifically, by implementing vSphere's robust role-based access control (RBAC) and auditing features, and by ensuring that data storage and processing locations align with regulatory mandates, e.g., GDPR, CCPA, or relevant industry-specific regulations, the design directly addresses the core compliance concerns. This proactive, layered security and compliance strategy minimizes risk and demonstrates due diligence. An incorrect approach that relies solely on network-level controls or post-deployment audits fails to meet the professional standard. Such an approach is professionally unacceptable because it creates significant regulatory and ethical failures. For instance, neglecting to configure granular RBAC within vSphere means that access to sensitive data or critical infrastructure components may be overly permissive, violating principles of least privilege and potentially leading to unauthorized access or data breaches. This directly contravenes regulations that mandate strict access controls and accountability. Furthermore, a lack of comprehensive, immutable logging of administrative actions and data access events, which is a core requirement for many compliance frameworks, renders the environment incapable of demonstrating adherence to audit requirements, leading to potential fines and reputational damage. Relying on external tools without integrating them into the vSphere design also creates gaps in visibility and control. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a thorough understanding of the applicable regulatory landscape for the specific jurisdiction and industry. This understanding must then be translated into concrete technical requirements that are mapped to the capabilities of VMware vSphere 7X. Architects should adopt a defense-in-depth strategy, incorporating security and compliance at every layer of the design, from physical infrastructure to application deployment. Regular risk assessments and compliance audits, integrated into the operational lifecycle, are crucial for maintaining adherence and adapting to evolving threats and regulations. Question 16. Regulatory review indicates that a financial services organization's VMware vSphere 7X environment requires a disaster recovery solution that ensures data residency for all customer financial data within the European Union, maintains encryption of data at rest, and in transit according to specific industry standards, and provides immutable audit logs for all recovery operations. The design team is evaluating various DR strategies, which approach best aligns with these regulatory mandates and professional best practices for advanced VMware vSphere design. Option A. Select a DR solution that meets the defined RTO/RPO objectives, and then engage legal and compliance teams to assess its suitability for regulatory adherence. Option B. Design a DR solution that explicitly incorporates data replication to EU-based recovery sites, mandates specific encryption protocols for data in transit and at rest, and implements a robust, immutable logging mechanism for all recovery actions, with early and continuous engagement from legal and compliance departments throughout the design and implementation phases. Option C. Focus on a DR solution that provides the fastest recovery times, with the understanding that data residency and specific encryption standards can be addressed through post-recovery configuration adjustments. Option D. Prioritize the most cost-effective DR solution that offers basic replication capabilities, assuming that compliance can be retrofitted if necessary. Correct answer is A. Select a DR solution that meets the defined RTO/RPO objectives, and then engage legal and compliance teams to assess its suitability for regulatory adherence. Explanation: the scenario presents a common challenge in advanced VMware vSphere design, balancing the need for robust disaster recovery (DR) capabilities with the strict regulatory compliance requirements of a financial services organization. The challenge lies in ensuring that the chosen DR solution not only meets technical RTO/RPO objectives, but also adheres to data residency, security, and auditability mandates without introducing undue risk or complexity. Careful judgment is required to select a solution that is both effective and compliant. The correct approach represents best professional practice because it prioritizes a comprehensive assessment of regulatory requirements before selecting a technical solution. This proactive stance ensures that the chosen DR strategy is inherently compliant, minimizing the risk of costly remediation or regulatory penalties later. By engaging with legal and compliance teams early, the design team can identify specific mandates, e.g., data sovereignty for customer data, specific encryption standards for sensitive information, audit trail requirements for recovery operations, and integrate them into the design from the outset. This aligns with the principle of privacy by design and security by design, which are fundamental to regulatory adherence in sensitive industries. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on technical RTO/RPO without considering regulatory mandates fails to meet professional standards. This oversight can lead to a DR solution that, while technically sound, is non-compliant. For instance, replicating data to a jurisdiction that violates data residency laws would be a significant regulatory failure, potentially resulting in fines and reputational damage. Another incorrect approach that prioritizes cost savings over compliance risks regulatory non-adherence. Choosing a cheaper DR solution that lacks the necessary security controls or auditability features required by financial regulations would be a critical ethical and regulatory failure. Finally, an approach that delays engagement with compliance teams until after the technical design is finalized is a procedural failure. This can lead to the need for extensive and expensive redesigns to meet compliance requirements, demonstrating a lack of foresight and professional diligence. The professional reasoning framework for such situations involves a phased approach. 1. Understand the regulatory landscape. Thoroughly research and document all applicable regulations and compliance frameworks relevant to the organization's industry and data types. 2. Engage stakeholders. Proactively involve legal, compliance, and security teams in the design process from the initial requirements gathering phase. 3. Translate requirements to technical specifications. Clearly define how regulatory mandates translate into specific technical requirements for the DR solution, e.g., encryption levels, access controls, logging, data location. 4. Evaluate solutions against requirements. Assess potential DR solutions not only on technical merit, but also on their ability to meet defined regulatory and security specifications. 5. Document and validate. Maintain comprehensive documentation of the design choices, their rationale, and how they address regulatory requirements. Obtain formal sign-off from compliance and legal teams. Question 17. System analysis indicates that a new, highly sensitive financial reporting application is to be deployed on VMware vSphere 7. X. The organization operates under strict financial data protection regulations. Which of the following approaches to ensuring the security and compliance of this deployment is most aligned with a robust risk management strategy and regulatory adherence? Option A. Apply security configurations recommended by the VMware vSphere vendor as default, assuming they meet all necessary compliance standards for financial data. Option B. Defer the identification and mitigation of security risks until after the application has been deployed and is in production, addressing issues as they arise. Option C. Implement security controls based on general industry best practices for virtualization, without a specific assessment of the application's unique risks or regulatory obligations. Option D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify potential threats, vulnerabilities, and their impact. Then design and implement security controls and mitigation strategies based on the findings, ensuring alignment with regulatory requirements. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify potential threats, vulnerabilities, and their impact. Then design and implement security controls and mitigation strategies based on the findings, ensuring alignment with regulatory requirements. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in advanced VMware vSphere design, balancing the need for robust security and compliance with the operational demands of a dynamic IT environment. The core difficulty lies in identifying and mitigating risks associated with a new, potentially sensitive, application deployment, without introducing undue operational friction or violating established security policies. The organization's reliance on a specific regulatory framework, implied by the exam's jurisdiction, necessitates a structured and documented approach to risk assessment, ensuring that all design decisions are justifiable and auditable. The challenge is amplified by the need to consider not just technical vulnerabilities, but also the potential impact on business continuity and data integrity, all within the constraints of the specified regulatory landscape. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a comprehensive risk assessment that systematically identifies potential threats, vulnerabilities, and their impact on the application and its underlying infrastructure. This process should align with the organization's established risk management framework and any relevant regulatory requirements. Best professional practice dictates a proactive stance, where risks are identified and evaluated early in the design lifecycle. This allows for the integration of appropriate controls and mitigation strategies directly into the vSphere design, rather than attempting to retrofit them later. Such an approach ensures that security and compliance are built in, not bolted on, leading to a more resilient and secure environment. This aligns with the principles of secure by design and defense in depth, which are fundamental to maintaining compliance and protecting sensitive data within the defined regulatory framework. Incorrect approach is analysis. Implementing security controls based solely on anecdotal evidence or industry best practices without a formal risk assessment is a significant regulatory and ethical failure. This approach lacks the necessary documentation and justification required by most compliance frameworks, can lead to misallocation of resources, overlooking critical risks, or implementing ineffective controls. Relying on vendor-provided security configurations without independent validation also presents a regulatory risk. While vendors aim for security, their default settings may not meet the specific compliance obligations of the organization or address unique environmental risks. This can result in non-compliance and potential data breaches. Furthermore, deferring risk mitigation to the operational phase, after the application is deployed, is a failure to adhere to proactive risk management principles. This significantly increases the likelihood of security incidents, data loss, and operational disruptions, all of which can have severe regulatory and financial consequences. It demonstrates a lack of due diligence and a disregard for the potential impact on the organization and its stakeholders. Professional reasoning. Professionals tasked with designing advanced VMware vSphere environments must adopt a structured and evidence-based approach to risk assessment. This involves understanding the specific regulatory landscape applicable to the organization, identifying all potential threats and vulnerabilities relevant to the proposed design, and evaluating the likelihood and impact of these risks. The decision-making process should prioritize mitigation strategies that are both effective and proportionate to the identified risks. This requires a deep understanding of the vSphere platform's capabilities, security features, and the organization's operational requirements. Documentation of the risk assessment process, the identified risks, and the chosen mitigation strategies is paramount for demonstrating compliance and for future audits. When faced with uncertainty, seeking input from security experts, compliance officers, and relevant stakeholders is crucial. The ultimate goal is to design a solution that is secure, compliant, and operationally sound, minimizing the potential for adverse events. Question 18. Market research demonstrates that a leading financial institution is planning to implement a new VMware vSphere 7X environment to support its core trading platforms. The project team is under pressure to deliver this infrastructure rapidly to capitalize on market opportunities. Which of the following approaches best aligns with regulatory expectations and professional best practices for managing the inherent risks associated with this deployment? Option A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify potential threats and vulnerabilities within the proposed vSphere 7X design, develop mitigation strategies, and integrate these into the deployment plan before proceeding. Option B. Proceed with the deployment immediately, relying on the vendor's default security configurations and assuming that the rapid deployment will provide a competitive advantage that outweighs potential risks. Option C. Implement the vSphere 7X environment using only the security features explicitly mandated by the most basic industry standards, without a specific assessment of the institution's unique risk profile or the advanced capabilities of vSphere 7X. Option D. Prioritize the performance optimization of the vSphere 7X environment to ensure trading platforms operate at maximum speed, deferring any detailed security or risk analysis until after the initial go-live. The correct answer is A. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment to identify potential threats and vulnerabilities within the proposed vSphere 7X design, develop mitigation strategies, and integrate these into the deployment plan before proceeding. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent tension between rapid technological adoption and the need for robust risk management in a highly regulated financial services environment. The pressure to innovate and gain a competitive edge can lead to overlooking critical security and compliance considerations. The complexity of a VMware vSphere 7X environment, with its intricate interdependencies and potential attack vectors, amplifies the risk. A failure to adequately assess and mitigate these risks before deployment could result in significant financial penalties, reputational damage, and operational disruption, all of which are particularly severe in the financial sector. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves a proactive and comprehensive risk assessment that is integrated into the design and deployment lifecycle. This aligns with best professional practices and regulatory expectations for financial institutions. Specifically, it necessitates a thorough identification of potential threats and vulnerabilities within the proposed VMware vSphere 7X implementation, followed by an evaluation of the likelihood and impact of these risks. Mitigation strategies, such as implementing robust access controls, encryption, regular patching, and disaster recovery planning, must be developed and documented. This systematic approach ensures that security and compliance are not afterthoughts but are foundational elements of the design, thereby minimizing the potential for adverse events and demonstrating due diligence to regulatory bodies. Incorrect approach is analysis. Proceeding with deployment without a formal risk assessment is a direct violation of regulatory requirements that mandate a proactive approach to IT security and operational resilience in financial services. This failure to identify and address potential risks before they materialize constitutes a significant ethical lapse and regulatory noncompliance, exposing the organization to unacceptable levels of exposure. Relying solely on vendor default security settings without a tailored risk assessment is insufficient. While vendors provide baseline security, they cannot account for the specific threat landscape, business context, or regulatory obligations of an individual organization. This approach demonstrates a lack of professional responsibility and a failure to meet the duty of care required in managing critical IT infrastructure. It is a passive stance that ignores the active threat environment, focusing exclusively on performance optimization without considering security implications is a critical error. While performance is important, it must be balanced with security and compliance. Prioritizing speed over security in a financial services context is a recipe for disaster, as it can inadvertently create exploitable weaknesses that could lead to data breaches or system compromise, resulting in severe regulatory sanctions and financial losses. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this domain must adopt a risk-based decision-making framework. This involves understanding the organization's specific risk appetite, regulatory obligations, and threat landscape. The process should begin with a comprehensive risk identification phase, followed by analysis and evaluation. Mitigation strategies should then be prioritized based on their effectiveness and feasibility. Continuous monitoring and periodic reassessment are crucial to adapt to evolving threats and changes in the environment. This iterative and proactive approach ensures that technology adoption is aligned with business objectives while maintaining a strong security and compliance posture. Question 19. Implementation of a new disaster recovery solution for critical virtual machines requires careful consideration of data replication strategies. The organization has defined strict RPO and RTO targets, but the specific failure modes of various replication technologies and their potential impact on data integrity during a failover event have not been thoroughly analyzed in the context of these targets. Which approach best addresses the inherent risks associated with this implementation? Option A. Rely solely on the vendor's marketing materials and basic technical specification to choose a replication solution that claims to meet RPO and RTO requirements. Option B. Implement the most commonly used replication technology within the industry, trusting that its widespread adoption implies adequate risk mitigation. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that quantifies the potential data loss and downtime associated with each viable replication technology, directly comparing these against the defined RPO and RTO targets to select the most appropriate solution. Option D. Select the replication technology that offers the lowest latency for data transfer, assuming this will inherently minimize data loss and recovery time. The correct answer is C. Conduct a comprehensive risk assessment that quantifies the potential data loss and downtime associated with each viable replication technology, directly comparing these against the defined RPO and RTO targets to select the most appropriate solution. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in advanced VMware vSphere design, balancing the need for robust disaster recovery capabilities with the inherent risks associated with data replication and potential data loss during a failover event. The professional challenge lies in selecting a risk mitigation strategy that is both technically sound and compliant with the organization's risk appetite and any applicable regulatory requirements for data integrity and availability. The complexity arises from the fact that no solution is entirely risk-free, and the chosen approach must demonstrably reduce the likelihood and impact of adverse events to an acceptable level. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves implementing a multifaceted risk assessment that explicitly considers the RPO, recovery point objective, and RTO, recovery time objective, requirements in conjunction with the specific replication technologies, failure modes, and potential data loss scenarios. This approach is best professional practice because it aligns technical solutions with business continuity objectives and regulatory mandates. By quantifying acceptable data loss, RPO, and downtime, RTO, the design team can objectively evaluate the effectiveness of different replication strategies, such as synchronous vs, asynchronous replication, and their associated risks. This systematic evaluation ensures that the chosen solution provides the necessary level of resilience without introducing unacceptable new risks or violating compliance standards related to data protection and availability. This aligns with the principles of responsible IT governance, which emphasizes understanding and managing risks to achieve business objectives. Incorrect approaches analysis. An approach that solely focuses on selecting the replication technology with the lowest latency without a comprehensive risk assessment is professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from prioritizing a single technical metric over the broader business and regulatory context. It risks implementing a solution that, while fast, might not meet the RPO or RTO, or might introduce other vulnerabilities not considered. This could lead to regulatory noncompliance if data loss exceeds acceptable thresholds or if recovery times are too long, impacting business operations and potentially incurring fines or reputational damage. Another professionally unacceptable approach is to assume that any form of replication inherently satisfies all risk mitigation requirements. This overlooks the nuances of different replication methods and their specific failure domains. For instance, asynchronous replication, while offering wider geographical distribution, carries a higher risk of data loss compared to synchronous replication in the event of a site failure. Without a detailed risk assessment that quantifies this potential data loss against the RPO, this assumption can lead to a false sense of security and potential noncompliance with data integrity regulations. Finally, an approach that relies on vendor documentation alone without independent validation or internal risk analysis is also flawed. While vendor documentation is valuable, it often presents an idealized view. A professional risk assessment requires an independent evaluation of the technology's capabilities and limitations within the specific operational environment, and in light of the organization's unique risk profile and regulatory obligations. Failing to do so can result in a design that is not adequately resilient or compliant, leading to potential breaches of service-level agreements or regulatory violations. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a structured risk management framework. This involves identifying potential threats to data availability and integrity, assessing the likelihood and impact of these threats, and then selecting and implementing appropriate controls, in this case, replication strategies. The decision-making process should always begin with understanding the business requirements, specifically RPO and RTO, and then evaluating technical solutions against these requirements and the organization's risk appetite. Regulatory compliance should be a constant consideration throughout the design and implementation phases, ensuring that the chosen solution meets all applicable legal and ethical standards for data protection and business continuity. Question 20. The control framework reveals a critical need to enhance the security posture of a vSphere 7X environment without disrupting ongoing critical business operations or introducing excessive administrative overhead. The design team is evaluating different strategies to achieve this balance, which approach best aligns with advanced design principles for securing a virtualized infrastructure. Option A. Deploy a single, powerful third-party security appliance at the network edge to inspect all inbound and outbound traffic, assuming this will cover all potential threats to the virtual environment. Option B. Implement a layered security model leveraging vSphere's native RBAC with least privilege, NSXT for network segmentation and microsegmentation, and comprehensive logging and monitoring of all administrative and VM-level activities. Option C. Grant broad administrative access to all IT operations staff to ensure quick resolution of any issues, relying on their collective experience to manage security implicitly. Option D. Focus solely on encrypting all virtual machine data at rest, neglecting network-level security controls and access management for the vSphere management plane. Correct answer is B. Implement a layered security model leveraging vSphere's native RBAC with least privilege, NSXT for network segmentation and microsegmentation, and comprehensive logging and monitoring of all administrative and VM-level activities. Explanation. Scenario analysis. The scenario presents a common challenge in advanced VMware vSphere design, balancing the need for robust security controls with the operational demands of a dynamic virtualized environment. The core difficulty lies in ensuring that security measures, while essential, do not become an impediment to legitimate administrative tasks or introduce undue complexity that could lead to misconfigurations. The pressure to implement controls quickly without thorough consideration of their impact on workflows and potential for unintended consequences is a significant professional challenge. Careful judgment is required to select security controls that are both effective and practical. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach prioritizes a layered security strategy that integrates with existing operational processes and leverages the native capabilities of vSphere 7X for granular control and auditing. This aligns with best practices for security design, which advocate for a defense-in-depth posture. By focusing on role-based access control, RBAC, with least privilege network segmentation using NSXT, and robust logging and monitoring, The design ensures that access is restricted to authorized personnel for specific tasks, network traffic is controlled, and all actions are auditable. This approach is professionally sound because it directly addresses the security objectives while minimizing operational friction and adhering to the principle of accountability, which is a cornerstone of secure IT operations. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach might involve implementing overly broad firewall rules at the vSphere infrastructure level without considering the specific network requirements of individual virtual machines or applications. This is professionally unacceptable because it can lead to network outages, prevent necessary communication between services, and hinder legitimate administrative access, thereby violating the principle of operational continuity. It also fails to provide granular security, making it difficult to pinpoint the source of any security incidents. Another incorrect approach could be to rely solely on external security tools without properly integrating them with vSphere's native security features. This creates security silos, increases complexity, and can lead to gaps in visibility and control. It is professionally unsound, as it deviates from best practices that advocate for leveraging the integrated security capabilities of the platform to achieve a more cohesive and manageable security posture. Furthermore, it may not fully address the unique security considerations of a virtualized environment. A third incorrect approach might be to grant excessive administrative privileges to a broad group of users to simplify day-to-day operations. This is a critical ethical and regulatory failure. It directly contravenes the principle of least privilege, significantly increasing the attack surface and the risk of accidental or malicious misconfigurations, data breaches, or unauthorized system modifications. Such an approach undermines accountability and makes it impossible to trace specific actions to individuals, which is a fundamental requirement for security audits and incident response. Professional reasoning. Professionals should adopt a systematic approach to security design. This involves understanding the specific threats and vulnerabilities relevant to the vSphere environment, defining clear security objectives, and then selecting controls that are effective, efficient, and align with operational requirements. The process should involve threat modeling, risk assessment, and a thorough understanding of vSphere security features and best practices. Decision-making should be guided by the principle of least privilege, defense in depth, and the need for comprehensive auditing and monitoring. Regular review and adaptation of security controls based on evolving threats and operational changes are also crucial.